This is OFN NFL Preview on the Lads Football Network for Week 1 of the 2020 NFL season that gets underway in a little bit more than 24 hours from our taping, which is Wednesday late afternoon, early evening. Mark Lawrence joining me from Playbook.com, and this is his magazine right here. You can order it at Playbook.com. You can go to Barnes & Nobles, Books of Millions. But either way, it's not only the magazine. You also can get the daily coffee cup emails and the weekly newsletters. So there's a whole lot. A smorgasbord of NFL and college football information from Playbook. Thanks to Monsieur Mark Lawrence.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Greg. And yes, we have a buffet of goodies with this, the first week of the National Football League season. And, if we would have talked about the possibility of this being the first week of the season and it being a go, back when the Big Ten and the Pac-12 bowed out, it was a 50-50 proposition whether the NFL would start on time or not. So those who bet yes are in the chips. Those who voted no are playing catch up this weekend.
Yeah, and so far so good, but we haven't had any legitimate travel yet. So we'll know within another week or two whether or not we might actually get through this thing without any major issues. And I also think even though we got a rash of stuff going on in college, NFL is protecting their players a whole lot better than anything that's going on in college. That's for sure. So,
well, I'm sure they will with all their protocols.
Yep.
I mean, they get every protocol in place that you could possibly imagine. But, like you say, the bottom line is getting on and off that airplane and in and out of that hotel, playing the game on the field, and traveling again thereafter. So we'll see exactly how it all shakes out.
And it's interesting because we have this weekly news show, Pat's Probe, with Evan Lazar from CLNSmedia.com. Yesterday, we were talking about how Bill Belichick, of course, Bill Belichick would. Now, I'm not sure how many other coaches have come up with this, but he's already started to figure out a way to manipulate the new rules with practice squads and so forth. So he's not going to put a kicker, one of his kickers, yet on the active roster. He'll do it at the last possible minute. So, like, if you look at the depth chart for the Patriots, at least in the beginning of the season, you won't even see they have a kicker. The kickers are on the practice squad because he doesn't have to make any of those changes into the last possible minute. Those are the rules by the NFL because of COVID. Now, chances are he's going to pick Nick Folk over the young rookie because Evan says the young rookie has been just scattershot all over the place in practices. And there's no way that he thinks they're going to rely on a young kid like that when you have Nick Folk, who's been pretty reliable over his career. But that's interesting. That'll be something to keep an eye on when it's all said and done, when the games are over and we take a look back, not just of the silliness of no fans in a lot of these places, but also how any of these rules might dictate some of these games or make it interesting.
Well, that's Bill Belichick. He's kind of about that Bobby Knight mold where looking for every edge imaginable. And, he'll explore that as deeply as he possibly can. And, you go back about a week or so ago, there was, I think the New York Mets game was delayed because of a drone that was overhead on the baseball playing field. And the comment was made that Bill Belichick has now got his drone license.
Yes.
Looking for another edge of any kind he can have.
That's right.
To maybe peer over other teams' practices. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Bill Belichick is piloting that drone.
Edge, cheating, call it what you want. All right. So before we get into these games, anything like as far as, well, I tell you what, regarding any of what you've looked at as history when you have new coaches, whether it's a new team or a first-time head coach ever, like a Joe Judge type, one of those guys. Do you ever notice anything at all that is useful early on, either the first few games or opening week or anything like that, that opens up regarding trends, things of that nature?
Well, new coaches, they're usually there for a reason, Greg, and it's because the program was floundering and they were in need of a change. It's rarely they're there just because a coach is out of his career and he retired. But, for the most part, they're there for a reason, which means they're taking over a program that's in need or in rebuild. So the bottom line to your question is they are very poor plays as favorites. and they're pretty good plays as home underdogs. They kind of don't want to disappoint the fans. They're playing with that chip on their shoulder. So I'm talking a little bit about Joe Judge here for the New York Giants this particular weekend, but watch that trend. Good as dogs, bad as favorites. Game one.
Okay, sounds good. And tomorrow night, the season kicks off in Kansas City. Defending Super Bowl champs take on a Houston Texans team. Some big changes, of course, for Houston. DeAndre Hopkins is out. They've tried to bolster the offensive line the last couple of years through the draft and through some deals, and I think they've done an excellent job of that. But a lot's going to depend on the health of David Johnson in the backfield, and they're going to rely on the Brandon Cooks and the Randall Cobbs. So far, though, it looks like Will Fuller's healthy week one. You never know when he's going to be healthy. And every time you have Deshaun Watson, you're going to be kind of scary. I just wonder, you see, this is, especially if it's like a 9-10 point favorite, I would think that this is a game where they're going to be distracted. First game, Super Bowl and all that. But on the other hand, without a lot of fans at the stadium to kind of pump them up because of that and all the celebration they would have had before the game with winning the Super Bowl, none of that's going to happen. So maybe that's an advantage for Kansas City, that they won't have that as a distraction.
Well, it certainly can't hurt Houston's chances with those situations being just what they are, because Kansas City is said to be the toughest place to play in the National Football League by all players. It's very, very difficult. It's so loud in there, and you don't realize how rabid the fans actually are. So, if they're cut back to 20,000 fans or so, it's not going to be, I think, an edge for the Chiefs in any way whatsoever. I think what the edge the Houston Texans taking in the football game is a massive chip on their shoulder from being destroyed in the playoffs last year after having had a 24-0 lead against Kansas City and then being outscored 51-7 thereafter.
Like a college game.
Now the unusual.
It's like a college game. That just doesn't happen in the NFL.
No, it doesn't. And you could see it coming. I mean, just the way that it unfolded. The score, the turnover, the score. And the unusual thing about this is not only is it that type of revenge, it's a season opening right back revenge rematch for Houston. Yeah. They ended their season against this team. They're going to begin their season against this team. Their opponent, Kansas City, went on to bigger and better things after that victory. And they'd be making a mistake if they look past the Houston Texans here, because they're going to get everything that Houston's got in this football game. Now, will it be enough? That remains to be seen. But you mentioned David Williams. I was just viewing some props from the Westgate Superbook in Las Vegas on this game, and David Williams, his over/under rushing total in the game is 48.5 yards.
David Johnson or Damian Williams?
Johnson, yes.
David Johnson?
Not Williams. I'm sorry, David Johnson. Yes, 48.5 yards.
That's pretty low.
So it's low. You really, again, a little bit of the, what's his health situation going to be? What's the game plan going to be?
And how quickly do they get behind if they abandon the run?
Right. But it does tell us he will be in uniform. And whether or not he'll be a factor, I know he won't be as much of a factor if DeAndre Hopkins were in the lineup. But it is what it is. They made that head-scratching trade. And I don't know if Bill O'Brien will want to justify that trade by pounding the rock with Williams or in this game, Johnson in this game, remains to be seen. But I think his game plan, O'Brien's, will be to keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands as much as he possibly can.
Yeah. And that does mean, because we saw 24-0 doesn't mean anything if you don't control the clock against that team. So it might even be better to control the clock more than get up to such a big lead. Who knows? But what about Super Bowl champs in week one? Especially since we've had this new schedule where the Super Bowl champ gets to play at home to open the season. Have we seen anything there that we should take advantage of?
Well, Super Bowl champions in game one have been really rather quite good, straight up and against the spread. But there's one role in which they really struggle, and that happens to be the role in which Kansas City will dress up in Thursday night. And it's simply a defending Super Bowl champion that's favored by more than 8 points in a season opening game.
Okay. Interesting.
They the last 6 times they've been out doing that, there's 1-5 against the spread.
Okay.
So that number gets a little bit tall in that sense.
Makes sense.
And you've also got a real strong factor in this game about game one underdogs of 8 or more points are 35-15 against the spread overall since 1987. That's a pretty strong number.
You said 8 or more?
You're getting 8 or more, right?
I like it.
So you couple this all together with what we talked about to open the show, the huge revenge factor. And I'll go out on one other note here, is that teams in game one who won 13 or more games the previous season, they're just 11-30 against the spread when they're taking on an opponent that has double revenge or more, as does the Houston Texans. So, you've got a lot of not only trends, but what I'm going to call systems. The teams in game one is a system. Dogs of 8 or more is a system. Super Bowl champions is a system. It doesn't apply to a team in particular. It applies to anybody who qualifies. So you've got 3 pretty good systems working in Houston's favor in this football game on Thursday night.
And by the way, you already helped me out with additional trends that work on my favor with 2 teams that I was already going with. Just what you said. And we'll talk about that with one of those teams first of all. That's our Cleveland Browns at Baltimore Ravens. Because let's give that trend again that we talked about last week for the Cleveland Browns. Opening week of the season, since they've returned to Cleveland, they are what, 1-19-1?
1-19-1 straight up, the Cleveland Browns in season opening games. But are we going to that game right now?
Yes.
I'm assuming we are.
Yes.
Okay.
But
I'm going to blow that out of the water. But I'm going to blow that up. Okay.
Well, the first thing is the only win was Baltimore. We talked about that last week.
That's correct.
So that's one good thing we got on our side.
Okay. The other thing is with the 35-10 spread angle I just mentioned to you about dogs of 8 or more.
That's the one I was saying. Yes, that I didn't know about. That added to a couple of other trends I like. Yes.
Exactly. And what you've also got is, if you take a look, Baltimore as a division home favorite of 8 or more points, they're 0-8 to the spread.
0-8. That's 8 straight losses as a home favorite of 8 or more.
In a division game, yes, exactly.
Division home favorites, 8 or more, yes.
Yes. So you couple all this together and one more. We'll put a little more whipped cream on here.
Okay. Baltimore is 5-30. Well, let me say, you have an end. I have an end too.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, here's my end. Baltimore is 5-13 against the spread. The last 18 is a home favorite.
There you go. All
right, give me your end.
Yeah. My end is it's what we call in our newsletter the clincher. Okay.
The double clincher.
And what the clincher says is that NFL Game 1 division underdogs that won 8 or fewer games the previous season are 39-10 against the spread.
That's juicy.
Yes, it is. So you've got all these great factors in the Browns' favor here, and you're not talking about a Cleveland Brown football team like last year.
No.
That
the
so
Kitchens
many
is gone.
Expectations were piled. Exactly. Now they're footloose and fancy free. Okay. I like their chances in this football game very well, to the point where in our newsletter, if you download our newsletter and you read our write-ups, we called Cleveland in the upset in this football game.
I like it. Like it. They're a 3-1 money line play, and I like it. And I actually think that I think when it's all said and done this weekend, I think the dogs are going to rule. I just got a feeling that with all the craziness that's gone on in this offseason, the dogs are going to rule week 1. What do you think?
Well, they are. I agree with you wholeheartedly, largely because there's a ton of division games this week. And division dogs in game 1 have been money in the bank. Everything that I'm talking about rolls, anything mentioning division rolls around dogs, okay? The 39-10 angle, the 35-10 angles. So you've got a plethora of underdogs that are division underdogs this week. The other side of the coin is half of the games playing this week are road favorites.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Well, a
So,
lot of
are you
home
going
dogs.
to? Yes, there's 8 of them. Okay, so are you going to want to go out with a home favorite into a minefield that's laid with the success of division underdogs? Uh, I think if you do, you better put your body-piercing armor on. Okay, yeah, I think you have a tough time coming back alive.
All right. Also, let's keep in mind that if you look at it, Cleveland, even though they've won just 2 out of the last 9 at Baltimore, they've covered 6 of the last 9 at Baltimore. And the last 2 years in the series against Baltimore, Cleveland is 2-2 straight up, 3-1 against the spread. And Baker Mayfield, in his 4 starts, 2-2 against Baltimore, 59% completion percentage, which isn't totally bad for a 2-year quarterback against the Raven defense, averaging 313 passing yards a game versus Baltimore, with 7 touchdowns and 6 picks.
Pretty strong. Not and you've also got in the mix Baker Mayfield coming off of a horrific year, a sophomore blues type year, where in amongst all those expectations was his poor play last season. So you mix all that together here, I think you've got a pretty strong angle on the Cleveland
Yes.
Browns. And by the way, if you happen to pick up a copy of the USA Today on the front page of the sports page, you will see that 119 and 1 angle
Ah,
that I just shared with you.
national.
USA Today.
Yeah, that's a national in your face
There
trend.
you go.
Yes.
In your face stat.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Now I wonder if in that article there's a little fine print. They beat Baltimore though. They're 1-0 week 1 against Baltimore. I'm not sure they. I'd be interested to find out where that is in that article. It'd be
Well,
sloppy if they
I
don't
write
have it at all.
I write a column in the USA Today Sports Weekly. I do an NFL column in there, and I share that stat. And I did mention that the only loss or the only win was against Baltimore. So
Yeah.
maybe they picked up on that.
Okay.
I don't know. But the main paper, the USA Today, has got the 119 and 1 stat in it on the Wednesday edition.
Okay. And look, if you're a Baltimore guy and you're taking Baltimore, I will give you one side that does work in Baltimore's favor. They have won 4 straight up and against the spread in their last 4 week 1 contests. Okay. Now, let's take a look at the other game that you kind of put the cherry on top with the trends that I liked. Green Bay and Minnesota. Minnesota, 2.5-point home favorite. I know your favorite spread coach, Mike Zimmer. And I was kind of adding all this stuff up on the fly, so hopefully I got this right. But bottom line is a pretty impressive stats, even if they're off a game a point or two. But Minnesota 30-8 straight up, 26-11-2 against the spread as a home favorite under Zimmer. That is an incredible mark. And Zimmer and the Vikings have won and covered the last 5 home openers, and they have won the last 4 week 1 games straight up and against the spread. So those are some really hard numbers that all go to Zim. But you were saying something about the division something or another that applies to this game, and now I forget what it was.
Well, Green Bay is a division dog. Okay.
Oh, the 13-win one. That was it.
Yeah.
What was that one with 13 wins?
Yeah, they do not fare well. That was with if the opponent had double revenge in the football
and Minnesota
game.
got swept last year.
I believe they did.
Yeah.
Yes, Green Bay won that division. What you've also got in here about Mike Zimmer is in part of his being an ATS money machine. Okay, if you look at him in games where the spread is what we call between the threes.
Okay.
And what that basically is -3 to +3. Anywhere in that range.
Which most of the time
okay?
you're going to get a win.
Yes. And Mike Zimmer happens to be 32-19 against the spread when he's within the threes, including 15-6 when he's at home.
Is that either home or either dog or favorite?
Between the threes.
Between the threes, either way.
-3 to,
okay.
Right. The thing that I don't like about Green Bay this year is what happened in the offseason when they slapped Aaron Rodgers in the face when they traded up to draft Jordan Love as their quarterback of the future. When they desperately needed wide receivers in this team in a draft that was loaded with wide
Mm-hmm.
receivers, and they chose none. I think you're going to have a very disgruntled quarterback in Aaron Rodgers this year, and I'm going to maybe even go so far as to say that Aaron Rodgers will be wearing a different uniform by the end of the season this year.
So you think that he'll get traded at the deadline?
I possibly so.
Okay. Well, look, the other way you could look at it is Aaron Rodgers is so upset that he knows I'm not going to be back next year in 2021 no matter what. He knows it. He kind of said it himself that he's just going to show it to Green Bay and he's going to go out and he's going to have a great year. So that could happen. But as far as this week 1 deal, look, like I was saying with Baltimore, there is something that works on Green Bay's side. If you take out San Francisco, because the Packers were an underdog 5 times last year, twice against the Niners. The other 3 times they were an underdog, they won every game in year 1 of LaFleur as the head coach of Green Bay. So just keep that in mind. They lost the 2 to San Francisco. They beat the other 3 teams that they were a dog of, as they are here, 2.5 points. Okay, now we'll stay out in the NFC. And this was also something we touched up on last week when we were talking about Arizona, San Francisco, and how Arizona played San Francisco tough last year. And they did, even though they lost both games, Arizona, they were 1-1 against the spread. And let's not forget that the last game that they played them, actually they were 1-0-1, I think. But the game that they were the last game against San Francisco, that was the game that they lost it late and had the cover late. Something crazy happened when they gave up a defensive touchdown to push the point spread, like at the last play of the game. So they went from winning the game to pushing the point spread. But here's something. Arizona, even when things looked really bad last year, if you take a look at the history of this rivalry, or the NFC West rivalry, Arizona's won 9 of the last 12 straight up, and they've covered 8 of the last 12. And then last year, when San Francisco was so much better than Arizona, Arizona still gave them fits in the 2 games they played. So I like Arizona getting 7 in this one.
Well, I'm going to revert back to that game 1 division dog that won 8 or fewer games last year, 39-10.
There you go.
To the spread. That's the Arizona Cardinals here. What you also have is a quarterback in Kyler Murray, who was the offensive rookie of the year, rookie offensive player of the year last year. And they went out and added DeAndre Hopkins to his arsenal.
Yep.
And DeAndre Hopkins he's been targeted an average of 10.5 times a game the last 5 years. You can be sure he'll be his go-to man. And if he doesn't go to DeAndre Hopkins, he'll be running the football. So it really opens and spreads the field up for Kyler Murray in a situation like this. We've talked about San Francisco regressing to the norm this football season. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is vastly overrated. There's more game film on him now than ever before. And yes, he is 17-10-1 to the spread as a starter, but he started his career 7-0 straight up and 6-1 to the spread. So he's been nothing but mediocre since then. And I think it ends up really biting him this football season here. I like Arizona in this game, and I like my favorite season win total, as we talked about last week, is playing San Francisco under the 11.5 wins.
All right, a couple more that work in favor of Arizona. Cardinals last year, they were a better road team than they were a home team. 3-5 on the road, straight up. 5-2-1 against the spread on the road last year. And Kyle Shanahan, this is his 4th year as the head coach of San Francisco. In his first 3 home openers, he has not covered any of them. He's won 2 of them, but he's 0-3 against the spread in home openers. Okay.
Yeah, and he's got a tall number to get over here on top of it. So, that sort of fits into the description, into the picture.
All right, now let's go to maybe the game of the week. Everybody wants to see Tom Brady at New Orleans. And this might be one of those situations where Tom Brady gets a break because he doesn't have to worry about that crazy Saint crowd. So it's going to be pretty quiet in the dome. So that works to the Bucs' advantage. Saints are a 3.5-point favorite. They've beaten the Bucks 3 straight up and against the spread. But a couple of trends I like here. Bruce Arians, 2-1 straight up, 3-0 against the spread in road openers, his last 3 in road openers as dogs. And Peyton and the Saints have been downright awful to open the season. In home openers, the last 5 home openers, the Saints are 1-4 straight up, 0-5 against the spread. And in the last 6 week 1 openers, the Saints are 1-5 straight up, 0-6 against the spread. I like the Bucks plus the 4 because, and this, I always say this at the beginning of the year, I always 100% of the time, unless we're talking heavy numbers, I always buy the half point. That's just the way I go about doing things.
Well, I'm with you in this football game here, and I'm enamored with Tom Brady, who just happens to be 36-19 to the spread in his career as an underdog. But what I really like about this contest is the fact that Tampa Bay has taken it on the chops 3 straight times against New Orleans. That's the feature article in our Bet You Didn't Know in the newsletter this week, and it involves NFL Division Road dogs that are playing with triple revenge exact. Not more than 3 losses because that becomes domination. Triple revenge exact. They're a Division Road dog. Those plays on the blind are 121-81 against the spread, which is a really strong number. And if you can take them the first half of the football season and take 3.5 points in those games, you're 48-19 to the spread. That also comes to Tampa Bay in this football game. And my final reasoning to getting to Tampa Bay is I'm a huge Bruce Arians fan.
Yes.
He brought him over here for a reason, and that's to open this offense up. And you got those numbers where New Orleans has choked before in the past. I don't know what's going to be any different about this particular game this year. They put a lot of money, Tampa Bay did, into this football team this year, and I think they're going to cash a check on Sunday.
All right, now we only have a couple minutes left, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some little tidbits here, some house cleaning, so little quick trends. I'm in, I'm out, you're in, you're out. We move to the next one. Dallas and the Rams. I just want to mention here that Sean McVay is 3-0 straight up and against the spread in home openers. He's 3-0 straight up and against the spread in week 1 openers. But as a home dog, Sean McVay has never won. He's 0-3 straight up and against the spread. For Dallas, it's a tough way about going to operate with them early on because Mike McCarthy versus the Clapper. So it's kind of tricky. How are you going to go ahead and do it?
I'm with the Dallas Cowboys here. It's a little bit difficult because I think the Rams are going to be up this year as well, but I've got Dallas going to and winning the Super Bowl this year.
We talked about that.
Well,
we had that last week. Yep.
Yeah, the thing I like about this is you got a Dak Prescott role here where he hasn't been able to sign that contract yet. Jared Goff signed a $100 million contract last summer. They were both drafted in the same year. I think you've got a big chip on Dak Prescott's shoulder in this football game here. I'm with the Cowboys in this contest.
And by the way, with Mike McCarthy, is one of these weeks, I guess we'll have to talk about any specific trends that work for or against him. But nothing so far in week 1.
Nothing so far for him in week 1, yes.
All right, Philadelphia. They've dominated Washington, 6-0 straight up, 5-1 against the spread of the last 6. They're a 6-point favorite over the Redskins. Even though that's the case, I just have a feeling Washington is going to keep this one close. If the Eagles win and cover, I think it's one of those, all right, it's tied. Eagles score a touchdown and kick the extra point with 3 or 4 minutes to go. But I like Washington actually in that game.
I like Washington here for a couple of reasons. Number one, you've got that 39-10 division dog, that 1-8 or fewer game angle working here. And what you've also got is, I think, a double reason for this football team to play emotionally. One is having Alex Smith back on the roster. I think that's huge for this football team and huge for the locker room. And also playing for Ron Rivera, who's just been diagnosed with cancer and is going through all these treatments here. I see a big effort by Washington. I know Philadelphia right now is banged up and beat up. I don't know if they're ready to go out and lay points in the road here. I think this is a big effort by Washington in this game.
Now, even though I like Detroit, I think they could be a playoff team this year, the Bears are getting 3, and yet they've beaten Detroit 4 straight times. Mitch Trubisky has been named the starter.
Well, that puts me right away on Detroit, okay?
But even those, remember, Chicago's beaten them 4 straight.
I understand. Yeah, but last year Detroit was 0-8 in the games Matthew Stafford didn't
Yeah,
play,
that's
and they
true.
they lost 7 games by a touchdown or less
Yeah.
last year. They cut that in half. This is a football team. I think they're one of the better over season win totals, over 7.5. And you still got the Chicago Bears being the Chicago Bears. I think Matt Nagy is on the hot seat more than even Doug Marrone this football season. Marrone will be replaced because they're going to draft Trevor Lawrence and
Yep.
so forth in a new regime. But Matt Nagy is also on the hot seat here. And I think the pressure's squarely on him. I'm with Detroit in this football game. I think they're a vastly improved
And
team.
I give Trubisky a half. He's got a collar that's short. If he doesn't have a good first half, Foles will be in the second. Because like you said, Nagy's got to win football games. He can't be waiting around to see Mitch Trubisky
Exactly.
kill him. Pittsburgh and Tomlin, shocked to see this, but he's just 1-7-1 against the spread in his last 9 openers.
Yeah, he's not in a real good role, and everybody's all over Pittsburgh here with Big Ben being back, but I don't know if Big Ben's in playing condition right now. He didn't have preseason to get himself ready. He's always been horribly, as you know, injury prone. And we have that angle with that new head coach as the home dog with Judge here for the New York Giants. I like the Giants in this football game. I think if they don't win this game, I think it's going to come down to a field goal, and I got to grab the points with Big Blue in this contest.
Dan Quinn is 4-1 straight up and against the spread in home openers, and they are like a 3-point dog, I believe, to Seattle, something like that.
Well, 1.5, 2-point dog.
Oh,
But
okay.
what I like even better is Matty Ryan, 11-1 straight up and against the spread in home openers in his career. And you've got the other side factoring flying West Coast to East Coast in this game in an early 10 a.m. body clock start time. I think Atlanta's a surprise team in this division, and I think it starts here with the upset of Seattle on Sunday.
And then we're going to close with Miami and New England. The Dolphins have won 3 out of the last 6 against the Patriots. We all saw what happened last year. The Patriots crushed them the first one. Miami, 17-point dog, last game of the season, upsets the Patriots. And that was the beginning of the end for the Patriots because it put them out. They couldn't get a bye. It just killed their chances of going to the Super Bowl. So you would think there'd be a little bit of revenge there, but there's key players that are gone from the Patriots. Tom Brady's gone. It's week 1 for Cam Newton and a new offense. And Fitzpatrick, hey, he was there last year. So was the coach. They do have a new coordinator in Shangali. It's a 6.5-point spread.
Got a very young team in Miami here too, as well. In fact, here's one for you. Ryan Fitzpatrick is the only player on this roster that's 30 years of age or older.
That's crazy.
And yes, the offensive line is green when I'm talking about young and youth. But I lean to Miami in the newsletter because of the division dog scenario. You won't find me playing it, though. I just think what happened to Miami from last year when they were a 17-point dog here the last game of the season and upset them, whereas they're a 6.5-point dog this year.
They're better.
Where did the 11 points go?
They're a better team than the one that beat the Patriots at the end of the season, and the Patriots are not better than the team that they were in that game.
The question is it 11 points for the difference? I think it may be a little too much.
That's anyway, a lot too much.
Yes, it is. So, small lean to me for Miami in the division dog, but I'll be playing it. I'll be watching it and not playing it.
All right, playbook.com. And how, tell us, is the easiest way for anybody listening to figure out what they want to do to take advantage, whether it's the magazine, the newsletter, the emails, just go to the playbook.com website?
Yeah, go to the playbook.com website. There's all sorts of call-outs for the different packages we're offering with the Playbook newsletter. We've got a $99 special on the newsletter through the Super Bowl. That's a heck of a savings. You might want to jump on that right now. And if you do that, you get the coffee club, as you mentioned, as a free, no-charge bonus. It's an email from me to you in your inbox every day, 6 a.m. in the morning, with my thoughts on the card. Check it out at playbook.com.
Mark, appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next week, week 2 of the NFL season.
Hey, Greg, my pleasure as always. Be well and have a good week.